Hey everyone, welcome to Crypt Finder. This is your ultimate haunt to tracking down some of those lost horror film treasures that you can add for your own crypt viewing experience. Tonight I'm going to do a little bit of a creepy crawly dive into a movie called Curse of the Black Widow. This is actually from September 16th, 1977. The story begins with a series of bizarre and brutal murders in Los Angeles. The victims are all men who have encountered a dark-haired woman with sort of a vague European accent. These men have all been found completely exsanguinated, all the blood gone from their bodies, huge holes in their chest, as if they have been attacked by a giant spider. These murders baffle the police, who are unable to find any solid leads whatsoever. Here we have Private Detective Mark Higbee coming into the story. He's played by Tony Franciosa, and he's drawn into the investigation when he is hired by Lee Lockwood, played by Donna Mills, a woman who believes that her sister might somehow be connected to the murders. Lee's sister is named Lavinia Kingsley. She just goes by Vinnie for short. She's played by Patty Duke. She's a woman with a very troubled past, including a history of mental instability. As Higbee digs deeper, he uncovers a legend surrounding the Lockwood family. Turns out the family has been cursed for generations by a supernatural force. At least according to the legend, women in the Lockwood family are doomed to transform into monstrous spider creatures during moments of extreme emotional stress, particularly jealousy or rage. Higbee begins to suspect that either Lee or Vinnie, or maybe both, are afflicted by this curse. But then how does this ultimately fit in with the police's prime suspect, this raven-haired, mysterious woman who goes by the name Valerie Stephan? Tony Franciosa does a nice job as the private eye who gets drawn into a web of mysterious murders. Franciosa brings a classic hard-boiled detective vibe to the film. He was an actor of stage, screen, and television. Certainly back in the 1950s, he was part of a whole group of Italian-American actors who came on the scene, really bursting with a lot of intensity to their roles. And this is way before Robert De Niro or Al Pacino burst onto the scene in the 1970s. So kind of makes you wonder just a little bit that maybe Tony Franciosa was born just a little too early to really hit the level of stardom that, well, maybe he deserved. You also have Donna Mills. She went on, of course, to star in Knots Landing. And we have Patty Duke also making a pretty nice cast. Patty Duke had won an Academy Award at the age of 16 for her role in The Miracle Worker in 1962 and became a popular television star in The Patty Duke Show. Her role in Curse of the Black Widow, it's a real departure for her, and yet at the same time, it really helps showcase some of her acting chops. Also co-starring is June Lockhart, who was Maureen Robinson in the classic Lost in Space series. And you also have Vic Morrow, who unfortunately just a few years later would be tragically killed along with two small children while filming the Twilight Zone movie in 1983. You do have Sid Caesar here in a bit part, as well as June Allison, and also Max Gale. He was already on Barney Miller at that time, had been since 1975, playing Detective Wojciechowicz, and he shows up in this film as well. This movie helms from famed director-producer Dan Curtis, who had a real golden streak of hits on television during the 1960s and 70s, starting with the soap opera Dark Shadows and continuing with the run of made-for-TV movies. This telefilm showed up kind of toward the end of his winning streak. It plays out a little bit like a weaker version of his 1972 made-for-TV movie that he produced, The Night Stalker. The similarities are pretty obvious. You got a regular Joe thrust into the supernatural while the police don't really believe the story and they want him to stop causing all the trouble. But here it's squished into a much weaker movie and a thinner storyline that goes a little bit off the rails. At least in The Night Stalker, you already had a preconceived idea of a vampire and what that means, and the movie does a great job recapping that and reinforcing the audience's perceptions. In this film, they are trying to establish a backstory and somehow link the girls to spider bites as infants. It's convoluted. The movie wastes a lot of time getting you there with that exposition, and you still aren't completely convinced on what's happening and why. In the end, you just have to kind of go with it's a vague sort of ancestral curse brought on by a spider bite and just, keep rolling forward. But Curtis was always really good at keeping the reveals hidden, using shadows as much as possible to great effect, and the same is true here. I always liked Dan Curtis, and that includes even when he left the horror genre behind and he started focusing on miniseries like The Winds of War and War in Remembrance. Okay, here he's not at the top of his game, but any excuse to delve into a Dan Curtis film, it's fine by me. I'm always going to be entertained. The overall effects, they're dated, and frankly, they might have been dated even for 1977, but the effects at the end of the film, when you're in a burning barn and you get your first real look at this enormous spider, I think it's still impressive. Now, the longer that the scene goes on, the more you start to figure out how they actually did the effect, but it's still a lot of fun. Plus, you also have an actor here, and I won't name which one because that would end up spoiling it, but this actor gets to go full Marlene Dietrich at times, and really, for that alone, it's worth a watch. Curse of the Black Widow combines elements of supernatural horror with a detective story, and then it also explores themes of sort of familial curses and dual personalities and transformation and the consequences of repressed emotions. Just maybe a month later, you would see the release of Looking for Mr. Goodbar, which again is sort of a cautionary tale about picking up people in bars. Now, granted, different reasons. I mean, turning into a giant spider when rejected, not quite the same, but still, it's a hell of a good time. No, the film isn't going to rock your world. It's basic popcorn fare, but you will find some entertaining and sometimes often unintentional humor, but there is no denying that the movie still, even now after all these years, it's pretty compelling. That'll do it for right now, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this little look back at Curse of the Black Widow. Stay curious and stay scared.